How's it going, everyone? You're listening to the Figuring It Out Finance podcast, where I, Chris Rickenbaugh, am documenting my journey in real estate and business while also talking a little bit about travel hacking and personal finance. I'm going to have a fun episode for everyone, and as you can tell by the title, I'm going to be talking about Padsplit. So I just hopped off my phone call with them a little bit ago for one of the properties I'm looking at renovating, and I wanted to break down a little bit about what we talked about, why I was looking at it, and where I'm going to go from here. So before we hop into that, go check out figuringitoutfinance.com, where you're going to have all of the links to everywhere you listen to podcasts. You can listen to this one and all of 108 episodes total. And then go follow me on Instagram and TikTok, where you'll be able to see what I'm doing daily. I post Monday through Friday on there, so go check it out. I do tours of the flip projects. I give, talk about what I'm learning. So go check that out. And so let's jump into today's podcast. And actually, before I do that, some cool stuff coming up. Doing my first interview on the podcast next week. So we got that planned. That'll probably come out next Friday, episode 110. And that's going to be a fun one to do. And changing my real estate company's name. So this podcast may even, change its name here in the near future. So going to be super excited to kind of start pushing that out. And so just stay tuned as things are changing. Been really, really busy these past 2 weeks, getting a property closed, getting things set up so that we can grow and grow easier. So interviewing VAs. That was another one this week, and we have some really cool leads that we're going to be able to design our business to be able to grow from the beginning rather than trying to be reactive. So I'm going to be doing a whole podcast about that soon, and just how we're doing that. So today's podcast going to be a lot about Padsplit. So if you don't know what Padsplit is, rent by the room. It's basically property management for rent by the room. So they're cutting up houses that are maybe a 3-bed, 2-bath, adding another 2 bedrooms in there to be able to, rent those by the room. And they do all of that property manages. So they screen the tenants, manage the money, and we got into the nitty-gritty on my call because why I was looking at this is we just finished up my flip that was going on for 5 months. So this was a true headache for me. And we finally got that one finished up. And it's a 5-bed, 3-bath, 1,942 square feet. So it's a really big house, and it has a lot of extra space to be able to put in even 2 to 3 more rooms. And it's been sitting on the market for a month. And actually, we just got under contract as of yesterday. So that's really exciting. But I was looking at all these options, and I'm like, all right, let's try out Padsplit. Let's see what we can do with this if we have to end up hanging on to it. So I decided to book the call. We got it under contract, and I'm like, I might as well just have the conversation anyway. So through this conversation, I had a really big home. I knew I could rent it by the room if it was in a good area. So I really wanted to see what areas they were looking in, and we went through the whole conversation. So they're looking for, in their specific markets where they're growing into. And I think this will eventually evolve, but, they're growing so fast because there's such a demand for rentals. And how do I live for the cheapest way possible? Because they were showing me on the stats, it's $1,500 on average for a 1-bedroom apartment. So that's crazy. I mean, that's, for somebody trying to make, or that equalize for somebody to be able to qualify on that for, what the normal standards are for qualifying for apartments, it's 3 times the rent. So that would mean somebody would have to be working 40 hours for $26 an hour to be able to qualify for that apartment. Like, that's nuts. Nobody's hiring for that. So Padsplit came in and said, hey, we can be renting out these rooms for a little over $200 per room. And it said even $250 for those who have a primary or a bathroom attached to it. So a private bathroom. So that's another thing to be able to look at. So a lot of these people with these houses, they're like, all right, well, they're obviously not cash flowing as a regular rental for a 3-bed, 2-bath that could go for $1,900 a month. Well, why don't I just add 2 bedrooms in this, rent it by the room, and put it on Padsplit, and that is going to be a gross income of $4,200 per month. So, that really gets the wheels turning. It's like, all right, so I have this many rooms, I can rent for this, and I really wanted to get into Padsplit's fees and what exactly they all do. So they're very hands-on from the beginning, so they give consultations on how to be able to design your home, and they sent me to Cubicasa, that you can actually walk through your home and it'll give you the layout where you can actually figure out how to add more rooms to your home. So that was a really cool tool that I'm going to be able to use for this next flip that I'm doing. And then what they're really able to do is, tell you how to rent it. And then once you're ready, you're going to be handing over all the property management to them, but it is going to be a small furnished rental. Like, you're going to have to put a bed in there, and you're going to have to make sure they have closets and some different things. So the owner, would do the furnishing, but they would do all the managing of the tenants, screening them, doing all the marketing to be able to get them in there, and then managing them while they are in there. And they have different parameters for people who sign up for it. And, I felt really good about that. And then you're actually able to pull up your area map to see where they're growing into, what's capacity, how many rooms are available. So they gave some pretty cool statistics in there on basically what they're looking for and if your area is a good Padsplit opportunity. So where that house, my original house that just got under contract, that would probably not be the best way or best Padsplit opportunity, but my next 2 flips are going to be awesome. So, and that's something we can start looking at now because we have a lot of extra square footage. And if we had to end up hanging on to them, then we could throw some extra rooms in there after it's been appraised and we get the money taken out. So it's a really good tool to have in your tool belt. And I think it's definitely something I'll have to look at on this next flip that we're doing. So, with that being said, I was really mainly looking at their fees. So they do weekly payments and then bi-weekly payments. And then I would get paid off the monthly as the owner. So that was really interesting to me on how they structure it. So they do a 12-week lease to be able to lock that person into a room. And this is all public information. This is just on the owner's side because this is something they're going to be able to tell you. So this 12 weeks that they lock somebody in, they have penalties and different things if they try to move out early, but the average stay is around 9 months. So what they do is they take 100% of the first 10 days of that income coming in. And then after that, they take 8% on revenue after the booking fees. So that it was going to be my big question. So say it's renting out for $4,000 a month all together with everything, they would take 8% out of that minus the booking fees. So, you are going to be cash flowing. Say that house would only be renting around, let's use their example of $1,900. You're probably going to be able to get it right above $3,000 with a fully furnished house on their example. So that's really interesting to see because you're not going to be able to do that with a normal rental now. So if you want cash flow, you have to look at the passivity of it to where you're going to have to be putting in a little bit of work, but that is where the cash flow is going to be. And it's not going to be as seasonal or seasonal at all compared to what an Airbnb would cost. So, it's a little bit of a happy medium on both to where it's a long-term rental, it's a medium-term rental. And then you also have the Airbnb aspect to where you have to put a little bit of furnishings in there for those tenants. So super, super interesting to be able to go through that conversation. And then once you're into their system on Padsplit, you're able to go through their maps. You're able to see the occupancy. So that's definitely something I'm going to be looking at as I go through these next flips, because we're doing a lot of the flips in Charlotte, and some of these would be great Padsplits because they're over 1,500 square feet. They're going to have at least a 3-bed, 2-bathroom as is, and then you're going to have the extra square feet where you could throw in another 2 or 3 bedrooms. So now you're looking at about 6 bedrooms per home, 2 bathrooms, and then you're able to hand off that property management to where if you normally rented it right after a refinance, you're leaving 20% in, but you're only going to be able to cash flow maybe a couple $100, maybe probably under $500 on a long-term rental, where, you know, you could take the risk on Airbnb and see if people want to stay there, or Padsplit where you're having longer term renters in there, and you're going to be able to produce the higher cash flow that you're looking for with a little bit of work. So, you know, that was my takeaway from, you know, going through Padsplit and, you know, my whole opinion on it. I think it's a great idea if you're in these metro areas, because if you're around the bus stops, if you're around the highways, if you have some parking, you know, you're going to be able to do that. And I was really curious on the demand, and they did a great job answering that question, because you can pull up their map. It's like, hey, this obviously shows we need more doors here. This shows where more doors are coming. So I think it's a great time to be able to get in. And then my question flows to, you know, in 5 years, whenever the world changes, is this still something that's going to be that we're needing? Or is it going to be something that's kind of like where everybody jumped into Airbnb, it was the Wild West for a while, and then the really smart business owners started jumping in and figuring out how to do it, how to profit, and now Airbnb is a completely different game than it was just 2 to 3 years ago. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see. But as for doing a Padsplit, I would say my next project is going to be looked at that depending on if I have to end up keeping it. So if I have to end up keeping that house, this is probably the way that I'm going to have to go rather than doing a long-term rental. And so going to be really interesting to see how that goes. But if you tune into this podcast, you keep listening, I'm going to be breaking it all down here, exactly what I'm doing, my strategies, and I really appreciate you listening. So next week, make sure you tune in next Friday, episode 110. So to this podcast right now is 108. So 110 is going to be my first interview where I'm interviewing somebody, and you'll have to tune in to see exactly what that is. I'm going to be targeting, you know, first time flippers, home buyers, anything. So make sure you tune into that episode, and I will see you next Tuesday for episode 109. This is Chris Rickenbaugh saying see you next time on the Figuring It Out Finance podcast.